covered wagon rolled easily along the snow-covered dirt road, and two horses out in front, and the two people sitting on the hard wooden bench, showed a kind of weariness that came from the hundreds of miles they'd covered searching for a new home. In the back was a little girl, Florence, Flo for short, and she was a climber. She'd spend her days rolling around in the back playing with her rag dolls, safe and warm. Then she noticed that right at the back of the tailboard was a sack of flour, and all of a sudden it had to be climbed. She'd try and try again and falling back. And then she sat studying this bag. She didn't cry every time she fell, she just studied it. And then slowly smiled and started to climb again. A foot in a little hole and a handful on a crease. And all of a sudden she got to the top. She discovered a new world outside that covered wagon. She let go of the tailboard and pointed at the new world she'd found. Just as she let go of the tailboard, the wagon lurched forward, back, sideways, pitching the little girl out of the back into a corkscrew somersault. She landed tail first onto the frozen snow. And that sudden shock of cold sucked all the air out of her. She couldn't cry out. And the parents were muffled against the wind and the cold and probably wouldn't have heard her anyway. But there was a witness to this, standing in the bare tree line. And he was about to turn his back, walk away. And he was thinking, the two legs can look after their own. And the big black wolf just stopped, turned around and went back. It wasn't in his nature to turn his back on anyone, two-legged or four, that needed his help. Flo corkscrewed around, slipped and slid around in this snow, trying to stand up. And then she saw this big black wolf coming towards her. She didn't know she should be afraid. And as he got within hand's reach, she reached out and grabbed a little handful of his shaggy coat and cried out, "Doggy, doggy!" And Shadow, the wolf, started to think he had to get her into some kind of shelter or she'd freeze. Then it came to him, the only place he could take her. And he picked her up by the collar of her coarse little blouse that she was wearing and carried her, not far, into a place with dry, out of the chill wind, and fairly safe. And when he left her, the next thought was she probably needed food. And there was only one place he could think of to get an answer to that, because where would he find berries in the middle of winter? And he realised that the only forest folk that would know would be the squirrels. So he started heading to where he knew there would be one squirrel at least that could help him. And as he ran, he put out a call to any other wolves in the area. A little while later he was answered by Lake, a female wolf. She was called Lake because her coat was the same colour as a cloudy lake. Lake and Shadow met on the track, and Shadow told her to go and keep the little two-legged pup warm until he got back. And he took off as fast as he could through the forest. And he stopped below a huge old tree, sniffed the air to get a scent, and then realised that who he was looking for was right behind him, up in the tree. Cyril the squirrel, fat little fella he was, fat little red squirrel. Shadow gave him the usual forest greeting, was, "How goes the season?" And Cyril replied, "The season goes cold. How can I help you, your largeness?" And Cyril had that flower of words. Shadow quite liked it. And Shadow said to him, "I have a need and you're the only one that can help me. I need berries. There's a two-legged pup that needs food." And the little squirrel scampered up and down the limb he was on, twittering to himself, "Berries, berries, where will I find berries in the middle of winter?" And Shadow waited for him to stop. "Cyril," he said, "I need the food, I need it now, and you're the only one who knows where it is." The squirrel looked down at him and eventually said, "Oh, all right, all right. Head towards the mountain. When you can see the river, follow it to the north until you come to the redwoods. I'll meet you there." And the squirrel took off through the trees at a speed that Shadow could not hope to match. The big black wolf took off after him, going through the rough terrain as fast as he could. And it wasn't too long before he reached the redwoods. And Shadow sniffed around and then saw the squirrel sitting on the tree down low. And Cyril pointed to a huge rock at the base of a cliff and told Shadow that the berries are behind there in a sheltered place with the snow and the ice couldn't reach. And Shadow went behind the rock and found what he was looking for, carried them back in his teeth. And just before he got to the shallow cave where he'd left Florence, he got another scent on the breeze. It was another human, another two-leg. And Shadow crept closer and saw a man searching in a circle for track. Shadow turned and ran to the cave and dropped the berries in front of Flo at her feet and told Lake. And as soon as he signalled she was to leave, then he ran back to see if he could find the man. The man was not far from where he'd first seen him. John Bennett was Flo's father, and he was searching for his little girl. And Shadow just came out into the open and sat. No aggression, no growl, he just came out. And as the man saw him, he snatched up his rifle. And over the open sight, you could see this wolf just sitting there. No sign of attack. And as his finger touched the trigger, it stopped. Very slowly, he lowered the rifle. And Shadow very carefully just stood back up. The two looked into each other's eyes for quite a while. John Bennett was surprised to see compassion in those eyes, that wolf. You've very rarely seen it in a human, never before in an animal. In Shadow, he could see a question. What are you trying to tell me? Shadow turned around and started to walk slowly back up the track. And he stopped and looked back. And John Bennett got it and followed the wolf. And just as he approached the cave, he howled quickly, and Lake took off out the back, out of the way. And at the mouth of the cave, Shadow just stopped and sat and looked inside, and then looked back at the father. And John realised that this is where his little girl was. And ducking under the shallow cave entrance, he saw his little girl. And in the sand around her, he could see two sets of very distinctive tracks, wolf tracks. One was the size of his hand, and the other one was quite a bit smaller. And he realised that there had been two wolves involved in this, and they'd looked after his little girl. And he picked her up and realised it, and felt it, and she was so warm. And then he saw the berry stains down her front. Well, they'd actually fed her too. He couldn't figure it out, but he was grateful. And he picked his little girl up, wrapped her inside his coat and carried her quickly back to his camp. And after a while, the redness in Flora Bennett's eyes, Flo's mother, was just about gone. Flo had been washed and changed and fed and put to bed. And John was recounting what he'd seen. He was telling his wife, he said, they had to be helping her. They had to have done it. How did she get so far off the trail? How did she get the berries? And Mrs. Bennett just sort of shook her head and said, I'm sure that there is a reasonable explanation for all of it. She got up and went to the back of the wagon. And then she came around to the back. There, right in front of her, was the biggest, blackest wolf she had ever seen. And in his teeth was a rabbit, fresh killed rabbit. She turned on her heels and screamed, John! And he came running. And as he came around, she turned back. And the only thing still there was the rabbit. She looked at her husband. John, that big black wolf you were talking about. And she walked over and picked up the rabbit. He said, yes? She handed him the rabbit and she said, I think he just brought us our supper. And then she looked around at where they were standing. And John saw her looking around too. They were both they were searching the forest for this wolf. He was still there, but they couldn't see him. And as they looked around at the forest, the land, John said to his wife, and I think we've found a home. And Flora smiled. After a few minutes, she said, yeah, I think we have. And its name is Wolf Haven. And that's the beginning of the story, the legend of Shadow the Black Wolf.